Welcome to your midweek guilty pleasure, the Salty Goddess podcast. I'm Ann Margaret Perry. Welcome to Wednesday, hump day. It's here. We're almost to Friday. Thank you. It's been a week of struggles, technology related. I'm telling you right now, technology is phenomenal. Look, but boy, it can be the bane of our existence. So listen, subscribe, download, share, comment. Everybody should be watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. So let's start talking about this week's great content. What we're going to talk about relationships. Is it love, or should we be addressing long-term relationships like contracts? In previous episodes, I've discussed with you that time is currency. It's your most valuable currency. So be careful who you give your time to, because it's something that you cannot replenish. I also talk about how relationships should be assessed like bank accounts, deposits, withdrawals, overdrafts, savings accounts covering the overdraft. If we look at it that way, yep, relationships should be taken in and worked on as if they are contracts. If marriage is negotiated like a contract, is that wrong? Is it right? Is it bad? Well, I don't think it takes the romance out of it. Talk about marriage like a contract. As a matter of fact, if marriage weren't a contract, then why do you need a judge, attorneys, and court to dissolve it? So I dare say we should probably start educating our youth into thinking like a business professional when it comes to these long-term relationships. You know, you go through puberty and your body is telling you naturally that your job is to go out and procreate because the next generation of the species needs to happen for the success and the continuation of the species. So that makes sense, but we're not ready to make long-term commitments until we're in our mid-20s when our brain fully develops. So we should be careful engaging in any behaviors or any actions or any commitments that can have long-term consequences when we're not ready to make those decisions yet or to enter into those contracts. And you're not at the age of 12. You just don't have the intelligence factor, the experience factor, or the wherewithal to make those decisions. So we should absolutely be realizing that the chemical attraction, the love, if you will, is one side of the equation. And then the other side of the equation are those compatibility issues, and negotiate those contracts. Honestly, marriage is one of the most important relationships. It is the most important relationship that you're going to have in your entire life. And people spend more time choosing their vehicle than they do their spouse, their partner. That's kind of wild to me because that doesn't make sense. So while I agree that we have to have attraction, which is the love side of things, we definitely should still be discussing compatibility issues. Right? The first 6 months of a relationship is that Twitter phase, if you will, where your body is flooded with oxytocin and endorphins, and you're looking at life through rose-colored glasses. You're on a natural high that you can't come off for that first 6 months. You and your potential partner are literally spending those first 4 to 6 months with a sales deck, a sales pitch, if you will, on your best behavior, strutting around like a peacock, if you will. But that's not realistic. All right. Not until after that 6-month phase, that Twitter-pated phase, when oxytocin levels return to normal, that you return to a normal logical phase, right? With endorphins and oxytocin flooding the system, rational thought goes right out the window. So this is a temporary phase, it's a temporary situation. So we shouldn't be making decisions that'll have lifelong implications based on a temporary condition. I think that makes sense to everybody, right? So that first 6 months, you shouldn't be making decisions about moving in together, buying a house together, combining your finances, or any of that stuff. Because at this point, you still don't even have a realistic understanding of what this person is about. A wise man once told me, you have to know someone for all the seasons before you can decide whether or not you want to spend the rest of your life with them. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? All this, that's spring, summer, winter, fall, or I should say autumn, spring, summer, autumn, and fall and winter. If you're in the northern hemisphere, you hit pretty much all 4 of those. That's a year, 365 days. The first 6 months, you're inundated with neurotransmitters, hormones, endorphins that don't have you thinking clearly. So that first phase, I think, go out, have a good time, meet, let that chemistry take place, but don't engage in any behavior or commit to any long-term situations until at least after that first 6 months. You're living life with rose-colored glasses in that first 6 months. When oxytocin levels and endorphin levels and hormone levels return to normal, right? Your body realizes, wait a second, why is there all this oxytocin? Why is there all this, endorphins, hormones running through my system? I need to get this under control. And to get it under control, your body reverts back. And then the next thing you know, you start noticing, did you notice that John chewed his mouth up? He leaves the toilet seat out a couple days a month. Joan acts a fool. All those things you don't start to realize until after the Twitter page goes away. And just so you know, you come by that Twitter page normally and naturally because that's what happens when the chemicals of attraction flood your brain. Totally normal. You're not any different than anybody else. All right? You hit the second phase, and this is where you start to do your due diligence and you dig down to understand what this other person is all about. I'm not telling you anything that is natural and normal. You go through puberty. Your body is telling you that what you need to do is procreate. That's your primal drive because the species needs to proliferate. It needs to be successful. So for that to happen, you need to go out, engage in intercourse, and make offspring, create offspring. This happens to you about the age of 12, 11, 12 years old. On average, okay? There are outliers, of course. That's a primal drive. You have no control over that. So we should be discussing this with our children to make them aware this is normal, totally normal, and this is what's going to happen. But you're 12. Ask your 12-year-old, are you ready for marriage? And they're going to look at you like you got 4 heads. Of course they're not. Because although hormonally they've reached the age of sexual maturity, their brain hasn't caught up with that. So they're not ready to make those decisions. Their brain doesn't make all of their great connections until they're about 25 years of age. You got to have those conversations. You've reached puberty. Your body is telling you to do this, but you're not really ready for this. At the age of 12 and 13, you're not ready to engage in behaviors that will have lifelong consequences. So, let's not sweep that under the carpet. Not going to help anybody by doing so. Bring it out. You can't make an educated decision if you educate them into understanding what's going on with their bodies. Okay? It's biology. It's nature. And there's nothing wrong with it. They're going to learn all about it in 5th grade. I think that's when they start to educate. Schools teach. They teach anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, biology. They don't teach morality. Morality comes from parents and society. That's our job too. Now, if you're not ready to have this conversation with your kids, find somebody who can have it. A medical professional, a pediatrician, a social worker, someone who is educated and can have this conversation with your child. There is nothing in this world worse than ignorance, and that it's unnecessary. There's textbooks, there's books that you can purchase that can explain to your kids the situations going on with them if you're not ready to have that conversation. Find someone responsible who can explain anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, all right? Explain nature, biology, all right? So sexual maturity at puberty, totally normal. Doesn't mean you're ready, though, to make decisions that will impact you for the rest of your life because your brain's not ready. So that happens. Then the next thing you know, you start being attracted to whether it's the same sex, opposite sex. I don't care. It's not my place to tell you what you're going to be attracted to. And I don't really care. So then what? Hormones are raging. Then you have chemical attraction. Your brain is being flooded with oxytocin and endorphins and estradiol and progesterone and testosterone. So you need to be able to manage that until you're ready to make decisions. Okay, so you fall in love, first 6 months, everything's wonderful. Are you making choices, good choices, educated choices? It's 2025, ladies and gentlemen. There should be no reason that I'm hearing about unwanted pregnancies. All right, protect yourselves. You're going to engage in intercourse prior to the time that you're ready to have children. Please be smart. Okay, that's your public service announcement for the week. Period. I'm just not about hiding behind abstinence and thinking that's the answer to everything. That's morality. That's none of my business. I'm here to talk to you about biology and the way it is in nature and relationships. So we wonder why we talk about teenagers being hormone crazed and all the rest of it. It's natural. It's what we're meant to do because every living organism on the planet wants the next generation because it's how the species continues. Again, primal drive. You have no control over it. So let's get back to relationships. So you're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19. You're not ready to make decisions about lifelong relationships at this age. It's impossible. You don't even know what you want for breakfast. You don't know what you want to do for a career, but you think you know who you want to spend the rest of your life with or the majority of your life. So we should be talking about relationships like business propositions. Okay. You can love a Corvette. I do. A Camaro. Absolutely. But are either one of those two vehicles appropriate to drive around in when you have a child in a car seat? Let me tell you something. You're going to throw out your back trying to get them in and out of that car seat in the back of the car. So no, it's not. So you can love something all day and all night. Doesn't mean it's appropriate for you. Maybe a minivan. I know a minivan myself. I'd rather have a Tahoe or a Yukon or an Escalade. Okay. So love is wonderful. Love is grand. It's what makes the world go round. But it's not everything. So after the Twitter pated phase is over, that first 6 months, and the rose-colored glasses come off and the oxytocin levels return to normal and rational thought returns, they have to start thinking about whether or not you are properly aligned with this individual, that you want to go on and create offspring. Because relationships are great. It's you and another person. That's fine. Once that relationship begins to affect more people, i.e. your children, your offspring, you have to start thinking more clearly and logically about this. So if you're not aligned, it's wonderful. But if you're not aligned and you're not compatible, then a long-term relationship and offspring are not for you. So you have to look at it and do your due diligence and decide, are we aligned financially? Are we both financially responsible? Is one of us financially responsible and willing to take over that, that whole responsibility? And is the other individual willing to allow that person to do that and to help them be responsible? Listen, I'm a spender. I love to shop. I love to spend money. Realistically, I know I'm supposed to save for the future, save for emergency, save for contingency, save for retirement. But if I don't have that self-discipline, how successful do you think a relationship is going to be if you both have zero self-discipline when it comes to spending money? You'll never have a pot to piss in, and you'll never have a window to throw it out of. So that's unrealistic. What about raising children? How do you feel is the appropriate way to raise children? Are you an authoritarian? Are you not an authoritarian? Are you more of a gentle parenting kind of person? You're at opposite ends of the spectrum with the individual that you're thinking that you want to procreate with. How do you think that's going to work out? Are you a morning person? I pop awake at 04:30. This morning it was 02:30. Maybe your partner is a night owl. How do you think that will align? So we should look at relationships like contracts and negotiate. You know that wise man that talked about knowing one another for all the seasons before marriage takes place? Also had some other pieces of advice for me as well. And one of those pieces of advice was compromise when you can. And when you cannot, do not. There are some non-negotiables for most of us. Okay. If you're a Ford driver, that's a non-negotiable for me. I'm Chevrolet GM all the way. You pull in the driveway in a Ford, and I realize it's going to be a very short date. Now, I say that in jest, of course. Okay. But you have to think about what your non-negotiables are. Do you want to go to college? Do you want a career? Do you want to be the stay-at-home child-rearing parent? All of these things actually do need to be discussed, brought out into the open, and spoken about honestly. And if you come into these discussions and you're not honest, how do you think that's going to impact your future with? You think that when you say, oh yeah, I want 10 kids, 12 kids, 6 kids, 100 kids, whatever it is, and then that's not really the truth, it's going to cause conflict. And when there's conflict, how do you resolve conflict? Are you good conflict resolution, or are you take no hostages, nuclear kind of individual, and you literally scorch earth to get your point across? Those are skills each of us need. And they're parts of that contract that you need to discuss. Are they good? Is this partner that you're potentially going to spend the rest of your life with, are they good under stress? Are they good under duress? If both of you are running around like chickens with your heads cut off when something goes wrong, how does that impact? Somebody might remain calm. Someone else might need to understand that there's a fire lit under their ass and action needs to be taken. And there's a healthy in between. But are you compatible? The question. And if you're not, do you think entering into a long-term relationship is the answer? Do you think that engaging in behaviors that can impact you long-term is a smart idea? And yes, I'm talking about intercourse. Are you going to engage in intercourse, run that potential risk of having a child? Because I will tell you, you are chained to that other person for a lifetime. And if you delude yourself into thinking that you're not, you don't belong in a long-term relationship, and you sure as hell don't belong engaging in what I would call long-term behaviors that will have consequences that will affect you, them, and your offspring. That's just a recipe for disaster. Sure. So I would say that treating relationships like a contract, like a business deal, we might actually see more marriages last longer if we did. If you speak openly, honestly, and negotiate, and really delve into the things that are important to you. And therefore, you must know yourself. Do you think you know yourself at the age of 16? Do you think you know yourself at the age of 20? I will tell you that the person that I am today is totally different than the person that I was when I was 16, when I was 20, when I was 25, when I was 35, when I was 45. We grow, we change. So just remember, time, your most valuable currency. Do you want to spend it in relationships with people that aren't aligned with your way of life, that don't have the same value that you do, that don't have the same belief system that you do, or that aren't willing to compromise, or that don't have great conflict resolution skills? I mean, speed dating kind of has it a little bit right. When you run through and you just check off certain things to see if someone is aligned with you or not, and whether or not you want to go to the next step. Do I believe in attraction? I do. Do I believe in love? I do. But I don't believe that attraction and love are the bulk of what makes a healthy long-term relationship. So I think you got to have both. And I think that midline, that somewhere in the middle place for both things, is how we make it through, and make it through to like a 30, 40, 50, 60-year relationship. I might be wrong. I'm only one person. I am open to hearing other people's thoughts about this. So I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me what your thoughts are. Can a marriage or long-term relationship live on love and attraction alone? Or does there need to be some level of contract negotiations, some level of business acumen so that you can get the most out of it and optimize your most valuable asset? Who wants to waste time being unhappy? Life's too short to be unhappy. So maybe this is what we should be teaching individuals, along with reconciling a bank book and learning how to do your taxes. Communication skills, compromise, conflict resolution. These are all tools for your toolbox. They don't just impact your work life, your employment. They impact every aspect, to include those personal relationships, friendships, lovers, partners. Do you think that you're going very far without good conflict resolution skills? Because you need them. You need them. What are we having for dinner tonight? One of the most difficult situations that we have to traverse is figuring out what we're going to have for dinner for the rest of our lives as adults. I miss the days when dinner was set on the table and prepared for me, and I got told what I was going to have for dinner. I kind of miss those days. That is getting more and more difficult as we age. And more often, I'd rather have tiramisu for dinner than a cheeseburger or a steak. But moderation in all things. So think about that contract. Think about, are your non-negotiables? Now, you're an adult, most likely listening to this podcast. You're most likely not a teenager. Well, maybe you are on YouTube. Hopefully, these are some of the tools you'll think about. And you're thinking, oh, I got forever to think about this. I'm going to tell you something. I think it was just 3 months ago I was 16. And now I'm in my late 50s. Time flies by. And you don't know where it went. Kind of scary. Don't mean to depress y'all. I'm sorry, it's Wednesday. We're supposed to be looking forward to Friday. Next week, it's St. Patrick's Day. Everybody's Irish for a day, right? Don't mean to get depressing and Debbie Downer-ish. But I want to hear from each of you. Reach out to me and tell me, what do you think? Love alone? Should we be treating marriage like a fairy tale? Like a Hallmark Channel movie? Not. That's a script. It's made up in someone's mind. It's a fantasy. The real life day-to-day crap. Who's taking out the trash? Who's cleaning the toilet? Hey, did you call the septic company so we could get the septic pumps? Who's organized? Who's not organized? Who flies by the seat of their pants? These are all things you have to think about. And it's a business deal. That's not to say opposites don't attract, because they absolutely do. And opposites can complement one another. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to have the tools to be able to traverse that situation and make it work for you. So I don't believe that love is dead. And I don't believe that everything has to be all business-like with an attorney on each side when we make these contracts. But I do believe relationships start with attraction and chemistry and that feeling of love. Good relationships, long-term relationships, happen because you're a good contract negotiator. So I think, Eric, there's your answer. It starts out with attraction, love, and chemistry. And long-term relationships last because you're a good conflict resolutor, resolve those conflicts. You can negotiate. You can compromise. And you're willing to work with another person. So there's some of your tools for your toolbox this week. Eric, thank you for bringing this into the forefront, because this was a totally unplanned episode, but I think it makes total sense. So thank you for joining me this week on the Salty Goddess podcast. Yep, I'm still Anne Margaret. Be sure to subscribe, share, follow, download, do all the things. Send me emoticon and let me know what your thoughts are about marriage. We'll see you next week.